I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 7 p.m. This is the regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. We would like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting will be live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. At this point, I'm going to quickly read a moment of silence. So I'll proceed. It is with heavy hearts that we share the news of the passing of Lisa Campisi, one of our valued Harder Middle School staff members. Lisa served as a dedicated school social worker at Kaneland Harder Middle School since 2013. Lisa also spent 6 years at elementary schools in Kaneland, 1 year at McDowell Elementary School, and 5 years at Blackberry Creek Elementary. Lisa had an evident passion for students and staff. The lives she touched will forever be impacted by her kindness and support. Lisa will be missed. Lisa, you will always be a Kaneland Knight. Please join me in a moment of silence to celebrate and honor the life of Lisa Campisi. Thank you. Students and family may reach out to administration at Harder Middle School and support will be made available. So if you would please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Kleisner.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. Minkowski.
Here.
Mr. McCulley.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons. Here.
And with 7 members present, we have a quorum. Is there anything the board would like to move from consent agenda to new business? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCulley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Minkowski.
Aye. All right, motion carries 7-0. It is now time for the board and superintendent salutes. I will turn it over to Dr. Layden.
Thank you. I have a couple tonight, and as you see in our audience, we have athletics and activities from the springtime that will be represented here in a second from Harder and Kaneland High School. But first, I'd like to share a recognition that we received as a district, primarily through the work of the business office and Dr. Fuchs. The IASBO International is a organization that has been in existence since 1910, and annually they review several annual comprehensive financial reports that are submitted, and as they review those, they do hand out their certificates. It is the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting, and it goes to districts on an annual basis for transparency in reporting and accuracy in reporting, and they look at the areas from finance, operations, food service, and transportation. And so I'm proud to share that this year Kaneland has received that based on our wonderful work in the district office and under Dr. Fuchs' direction. So congratulations. And at J1 and J2, you'll see that in action as she's going through the budget in both of those areas. So thank you again and congratulations.
Thank you.
One piece I want to note before we share from the athletic and activity side, we do have scheduled for tonight, we're going to have the SIP update, school improvement plan, and how we did in that area, and student academics. But due to the budgeting and the safety updates potentially being longer reports, we wanted to try to keep our board agendas balanced. So you'll hear from Dr. Amum and Mr. Ali at the July 31st meeting. They'll come and share both from the school improvement side and the academic side. So those are both extremely important. So we didn't put athletics and activities. While we love that, we didn't put that in front of athletics, and in front of the academic side. We'll have that in July. Have a series of updates on how we're doing with SEL, how we're doing academically, test scores, discipline, a few of those data points that they'll both mention at the next meeting. So with that, I will turn over the next salute to Mr. Faulkner. I think he's about to turn it to someone else, but I'll turn it to Mr. Faulkner first so he can share the harder highlights.
Hi, Alyssa Galvin. I am the Harder Middle School track coach. I am one of 6 of the track coaches: Zach Martinelli, Jackie Hagan, Zach Monroe, and Jake Kaufman. All are track coaches, as well as Kendall Lawson is a volunteer track coach as well. I just want to go through all of our finishes in our season. We had a really great season this year. 42 6th grade athletes came out, and our 6th grade athletes participate once a week to prepare them for our 7th and 8th grade season. And then we had 91 7th and 8th graders participating in track this season. Throughout the whole season, April and May, we have a lot of meets, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, but our big meets are the last 3 weekends. We have our conference meet, which our 8th grade team finished 2nd, our 7th grade boys team finished 6th, our 8th grade girls finished 2nd, and the 7th grade girls finished 4th. 50 of our athletes placed top 3 in our conference, in any of our conference events. Our ISA sectional meet was held at Lincoln Way West High School. We had 21 athletes finish top 3. 7th grade Carson Kaiser broke his own school record in the 1600 meter run. Our 4x1 team of Colton Ludwig, Ben Carl, Gavin Smith, and Anthony Bickle, who is here today, broke their school record from 2010 with running a 47.72 4x1. And then Gavin Smith ran the 400 and also broke a school record in the 400. And then we had 10 students qualify for state. The only way to qualify for state is to make their qualifying mark at sectionals or place first. So it is really impressive that 10 of our athletes place first or met qualifying mark. Anthony Bickle, Grace Brunstein, Caden Kaiser, Carson Kaiser, Ben Carl, Colton Ludwig, Amani Meeks, Gavin Smith, Isaac Taylor, and Colton Van Dyke all attended our state meet. Amani Meeks placed 7th, earning a medal and being an all-state athlete in the 7th grade long jump, the 8th grade long jump. Grace Brunstein placed 7th in 7th grade long jump, earning a medal as an all-state athlete. Gavin Smith placed 8th in the 400, earning a medal, and Carson Kaiser placed 6th in the 1600 meter run, also earning a medal. So congratulations to all of our 7th and 8th grade athletes. We're excited to see what our 8th graders do next year at the high school and our 6th graders coming in for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and congratulations to all of our students that participated in spring athletics and activities. Mr. Roman, I'll turn it over to you now for the high school.
Alyssa, I was hoping you were going to talk a little bit longer than that, so it doesn't seem so long. Dr. Layton, representatives of the school board, I appreciate us being able to come and share our accomplishments. As you know, obviously the summer meeting is very difficult with vacations. We have a lot of coaches and kids gone. But start with baseball. I believe that you've got a copy of this, but our baseball team had another very successful season this year at all 3 levels. Our freshmen finished 2nd in the Interstate 8 with an overall record of 17-10. And the sophomore finished 2nd in the Interstate 8 with an overall record of 28-1. The varsity went 21-13 this year. They finished 3rd in the Interstate 8 conference with a 10-4 record. We always put a very tough schedule together. Coach Aversa works on that very much throughout the year. They played teams like Joliet Catholic, St. Charles East, Batavia, Geneva. Most of our schedule in baseball and for many of our spring sports is against much larger schools. So I always like to point that out because our kids do extremely well against those larger schools. Our baseball and softball teams once again held their annual pig roast. Again, very successful. Coach Aversa did ask me to point out that next year it's on St. Patty's Day. But we did beat Sycamore, who ended up 3rd in the state, and St. Charles East, who at the time was ranked 2nd in the state. We had 4 players named to all conference and 1 honorable mention, along with multiple players to various all-area teams. The baseball team earned the IHSA Team Academic Award for the 10th time in the last 12 years. That means that the entire team held a 3.0 GPA or higher for their second semester. The team beat Batavia again for another very successful senior night over at Kane County. And all of the money that is raised during that senior night game between Kaneland and Batavia is then donated to a local family. The team accomplished another 20-win season after a slow start. They won 18 of their last 22 games. Our school was also selected to host this year the 3A sectional. This is the first time in school history that Kaneland has held the sectional tournament for baseball. I do want to give a shout out to Coach Aversa and Coach Clayson, who spent a lot of time, especially when the rain came, to make sure that those games all took place that night. So, a lot of individual recognitions: Alex Panico, Johnny Spalasso, Zach Conrad, Parker Violet, Colin Miller, Anthony Campisi, and Tom Thill, a sophomore, all received various honors from all conference to all area. And those are listed in your packet there. Softball this year, again, I think made extremely impressive strides. We lost longtime coach Mike Kiefler to retirement last year. Maddie Mikos took over the program and made it her own. One of the things that they did is they switched their spring break trip to Gulf Shores to be in conjunction with boys baseball. What that provided was our girls and boys were then able to go and watch each other play during those tournament games. Another great bonding experience. Coach Mikos also wanted me to point out that the tournament in Peoria, the tournament in Rock Island, all of these events that our school district allows us to attend gives our kids an advantage. First of all, it was snowing here when they were playing baseball and softball. Second of all, it's a great bonding experience. It's a great experience outside of the classroom for our kids, from anything from budgeting to making sure you pack everything to, being at all those places on time. Lots of different things that they're learning outside of the classroom. Awards and accomplishments included, they ended up being the 2023 Burlington Central Regional Champions. They beat Harvard. They were not supposed to score a run against Harvard, let alone beat them for the regional championship. That was an exceptionally large accomplishment. They had a couple all-area athletes, Mac Hardy, Kaylee Plank, and Bryn Woods were honorable mention, and all conference athletes, Mac Hardy, Gabby Gonzalez, and Bryn Woods as well. They also participated in their first program-wide volunteer day at Northern Illinois Food Bank. We're always happy to see our athletes out in the community and doing good among our community members. They also hosted the Kaneland Youth Softball League for the first time. We had about 30 kids come out that night, and which I think is great because we had to reschedule it 3 different times because of weather. So it was great to see our future nights out there on the field. Our lacrosse team and Coach Carrier would like to thank the board members for allowing us to compete for the school. They're currently in Naperville in their summer league tonight, so they couldn't be here. They had a very difficult transition, Coach Carrier said. They graduated 12 seniors last year. They had a tough schedule and a very young team. Players come to work every day and competed hard. Their leading scorers were junior Adam Leach and sophomore Garrett Wills, and they graduated 6 seniors this year as well. They do expect to pick up more kids. They've already gotten a few more that are interested and are participating in their summer program. They had 14 players earn Interstate 8 Conference All Academic, which means they had a 3.0 or a 3.5 GPA in order to make that. And while we don't have a conference for lacrosse, those parameters are still in place, and 14 of our lacrosse players met that. In girls soccer, and Coach Perillo asked me to say this is the first time he's missed one of these. He was, I believe, babysitting his new grandchild this evening. The JV team peaked at the end of the season, and they took second in the conference and second in the JV tournament. The varsity went 14-6, 8-0 in the conference. They are the I-8 conference champions and tournament champions, and then turn around and were the regional champions as well. They outscored their conference opponents this year 61-2, and outscored all opponents this season 92-22. Mr. Perillo said in all his years of coaching at Kaneland, this has been the most talented girls soccer program that he has seen come through. We were able to get 7 all-conference players. Nobody on our mention, all-conference. Bridget Gannon, Maddie Nitchie, Emily Kunzer, Maddie Schrader, Jade Schrader, Casey O'Brien, and Alex Warrington. Emily and Bridget were named co-players of the conference, and they both also received state recognition for all state teams. It is a note too that they lost in the sectional final. The sectional semifinal to Bennett Academy. There were 17 teams in their sectional, and 8 of them were private schools. So for them to get that far, and they literally lost in the last 2 minutes of that game. So while it was a heartbreaker, it was a heck of a season for them. Coach King, who will be moving on to assistant principal and will be filling his spot soon, reported that this is the 3rd year of our tennis program. The team had many new players after graduating 12 seniors last year. Overall, the team made up of 6 seniors, 6 juniors, 2 sophomores, and a freshman. They had 1 returning varsity player, and he moved from third doubles to singles. Highlights included varsity winning, getting 3rd at the Crystal Lake tournament, a home victory against Rockford Lutheran, which we had not done in the previous 2 years, beating Rockford Lutheran. Matt was a 3-year varsity player, and Alan Tapia was a 3-year program player as well. So those 2 guys will be missed. The team finished 6th overall in the conference and are looking to bring back 4 varsity players for next season. Girls track and field. First of all, Coach Franklin wanted to make sure he thanked his assistant coaches. He wanted to also talk about the being able to complete a full season this year, taking advantage after the COVID years, feeling regular, he said, this year. All right. Here's a little overview of some of the highlights from girls track and field. They were undefeated, in dual conference meets. In our 42nd annual Jill Holmes meet that we host, they took first place. In the Ottawa Frick Invite, they took first place. In the Abby McGregor Invite, they were 2nd. They were 1st in the I-8 conference meet. They were not supposed to get 1st. They did. You can see a whole list of all conference athletes and their various events. Jessica Phillip, Grayson Cole, Danielle Bauer, Olivia Pastovich, Linda Ray, Peyton Burnett, Amari Eddington, Kennedy Reed, Emma Perry, Emma Gatz, Lindsay Andre, Abby Fitz, Jackie Netton, Abigail Lahaki, Giselle Galvez, and Cora Heller, all for at least one event, were named all conference. And as Coach said earlier, you have to be able to qualify that. That is not a subjective thing. That's not something coaches vote on. You actually have to meet those times and be the winner to be all conference. They placed 2nd at the sectional and qualified 4 individuals: Amari Eddington in triple jump, Cora Heller in pole vault, Olivia Pastovich in hurdles, in 300-meter hurdles, and Jessica Phillip in the pole vault. They went on to place at the state meet. At this time, I'm happy to bring up 3 of our distinguished boys track athletes. They would like to speak with you a little bit today.
We don't have anything written down, but Coach Trundle is not here today, so he wanted to send us here to just recap all of our accomplishments and everything we did this year. So starting out for the indoor season, after our 2nd meet, we won the Carthage Invite, which is at Carthage College. And then as soon as we got into the outdoor season, we hosted Kaneland's own Peterson Prep Invite with a bunch of good schools and a bunch of good teams, and we ended up winning that. And along with that, we went to Crystal Lake High School to win that meet, along with a lot of good schools and a lot of fast kids. And we also won the I-8 conference meet for the 6th year in a row. And we ended up giving Coach Drendel his first ever sectional win, and we ended up sending about 15 individuals down at state, and there will be 3 returning all-state athletes for next year. So that's all I really have. I mean, we had probably one of the best years in a long time, and our program has been nothing but consistent for a lot of years now. And Coach Drendel, if he was here, he would have so much more to say about all the athletes and everybody. And yeah, this year was a really spectacular year and very successful to say the least. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Jake. Got one more very special athletic individual that I would like to introduce you today, but before I get to that, I just wanted to throw a couple of numbers at you. We averaged over 350 athletes per season this year. We hosted a little over 850 events at KHS. I do want to take a moment to thank Dr. Horn. Coming in his first year, it was very evident how much support we were going to get from him this year. Our athletes and coaches has noticed it very much so, Dr. Horn, so we appreciate you being at all those events and filling in where we need you. I'm also going to put out a program note. We have moved homecoming for next fall. It will be the first week of October. The parade and powder puff game will be on Wednesday the 4th. We play Marengo at home on the 6th, and then our dance will be on October 7th. And that's just a change from what originally came out. Last but not least, I have the honor to recognize Senior Ethan Yost. If you would join me, Senior, if you would, Mr. Yost. Ethan has represented Kaneland in boys gymnastics for 3 years. We did that. 3, yeah. Okay. Obviously, we do not have a boys or girls gymnastics teams, but we're able to compete outside within the IHSA parameters and at the state meet. I am happy to announce and share with you that Ethan finished in first place in the floor exercise. He'll tell you a little bit more about this, but that makes him the first and only ever Kaneland athlete to be a boys gymnastic state champion. So Ethan, congratulations to you. Timing is everything, because weeks after Ethan took that medal home, the IHSA has decided they do not have enough teams competing any longer to hold an IHSA state series in boys gymnastics. There are quite a few of us schools that have either individual athletes or teams that will continue some kind of tradition, but that was the last one, so excellent timing. Ethan, take it over. Tell them about yourself.
Alrighty, so I went to about 4 invitational meets before sectionals in state this year. I placed kind of varyingly on that. I competed in the all-around in every single meet. At sectionals, I competed in the all-around. I placed first on floor there too, and then I placed 5th all-around at sectionals. And then at state, I qualified for the finals on the floor exercise, and like you said, there I placed first there. So I got the state title for floor exercise and boys gymnastics. I want to thank you all for letting me represent Kaneland. It's been an honor. So thank you so much. And then I'll be attending St. Louis University next year, not to compete in gymnastics because they don't have a team, but we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll find a way to do it.
Awesome. I'm sure you will.
All right, thank you.
Congrats. Thank you very much. Thank you to our families and athletes for coming out tonight. Mr. Faulkner and Ms. Galvin and Dr. Horn and Mr. Rollman, thank you for sharing the highlights, and thanks for all those updates. Now, if you do want to scoot out, that would be the time to scoot out before we get into the other business, but that was all we had for salutes tonight. Thank you and congratulations on your seasons.
Congratulations, guys.
And that was all we had. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Dr. Fuchs, do you have anything to add?
That's fine. Thank you.
All right. So we will move on to consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items. Approval of accounts payable and payroll June 2023. Approval of the treasurer's report May 2023. Approval of minutes of the May 31st, 2023 regular meeting. Approval of personnel. Approval of destruction of audio recordings from closed session meetings from December 2021. Excuse me. Approval of the memorandum of agreement for executive director, for the executive director of the Kaneland Arts Initiative. Approval of handbooks for support staff, second reading. Approval of safe school application for 2023-2024. Approval of authorization to submit submit consolidated district plan. Approval of the intergovernmental agreement for reimbursement of school health services with the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services. And then the following informational items: student suspension data report, field trip notification, Freedom of Information Act report. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. McKinsey.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. All righty, it is now time for public comment. Did anyone sign up? No. All right, no one has signed up. However, if anyone would like to present or if anyone present would wish to make a public comment at this time, please note that there will be a second opportunity at the end of this meeting. Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Does anyone want to get up there and talk? All right. We will move on to new business. All right, the first item of new business is the approval of the 2023-2024 tentative budget for the Fox Valley Career Center. Dr. Fuchs, could you please provide more information?
So Fox Valley Career Center, as you know, is under the administrative agent of Kaneland School District. So with that being said, we do everything in the business office for Fox Valley that we do for Kaneland. Additionally, their budgeting process is very similar to ours and requires similar procedures and processes. The difference is the Fox Valley Career Center also has a board of directors that is comprised of local superintendents. So the superintendents have already viewed and approved this budget. And so our job tonight is to have the Kaneland board do it. And then in September, this is the tentative budget, which is required to be presented at least 30 days prior to the final budget. We always try to do our tentative budget before July 1st, which is the first day of the fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. And so we will bring a final budget back to the board in September for Fox Valley, just like we will for Kaneland. So during the summer, we make updates. Dr. Atkins continues to hire staff. We'll continue to update salaries and benefits for Fox Valley. That's probably your biggest changes. And then if Dr. Burchell, the Career Center Director, learns any information that has an impact on the budget, he'll make those updates. Sometimes we get grant information and we have to modify a few of the line items. But through the summer, we try to make as minimal changes as possible. In terms of this budget and the Kaneland budget, they are both in pretty good order in terms of getting to September in the final budget. With that being said, for Fox Valley, their revenue primarily comes from tuition. So any student that attends Fox Valley Career Center, their school district is responsible for paying their tuition to the center. Then that tuition that we collect, we pay our bills with. Some of those bills would be your salaries, benefits, any licenses, software, hardware, supplies, materials, capital. And then each year in September, we true up the budget from the prior year. And most often, districts will get a refund. So we budget conservatively, meaning you underestimate revenues, you overestimate expenses, and then that way you don't have to collect extra money from the school districts if you run short. Rather, we give the money back to the school districts in the fall. And again, all of that happens in our business office because we are the administrative agents. Additionally, in addition to tuition, Fox Valley also gets their money from state and federal grants. This year, they're expecting about 320,000. About 38,000 will be in Perkins. The rest of it will be in what's called CTEI. That's the Career and Technical Education Improvement Grant. The total revenues right now for Fox Valley is just around 2.35 million. You can see the exact number in your report. All of the staff at Fox Valley will receive a raise. Most instructional staff is estimated to be around 4.3%. The support staff will be at 6.5%, and those instructors on retirement contracts are at 6%. So on the expenditure side, the supply budget will increase about 7%. They've got a few new things to purchase. And then in terms of total expenditures, it's 2.334 million. You can see the exact number on page 2. Overall, their expenditure budget will be 5% larger than the current one, with revenues exceeding expenditures by approximately $11,620.03. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Could you elaborate a little bit on, so with two boards for the Fox Valley Career Center and their board made of the superintendents approving the budget, where do we, in terms of fiscal responsibility, how does that fall on us? So let's say they approved it and we didn't approve it. I mean, how does that work?
Sure. The superintendents are generally fiscally responsible people. So we've not ever experienced a time when, and the director brings a fiscally responsible budget to the superintendents. So there's never been an example of what you're asking for. But if there were a time, we would send this back to the superintendents. We would have to approve the tentative, but we would send it back with direction of, but we want to see this happen, whatever this is, change, and they would take that into consideration. We submit the actual budget to the State Board of Education, so it is on this board to ensure it. But again, you have school superintendents from the 5 or 6 districts comprising that board with the same expectations for their local budgets as for the Career Center.
So in theory, we would have to come to a consensus agreement if there were,
Issues.
yeah, okay.
And this is similar to Mid-Valley, with the Mid-Valley Cooperative, that's overseen by St. Charles. So the superintendents get together, discuss that one and approve that. And then that one also goes to the St. Charles Board, just as this one comes to the Kaneland Board. So it's the same process.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick question about the tuition reimbursement. So we're budgeting the 1.9 million for tuition. Our district, however many students we have from our district 302, will pay that tuition.
We won't pay the full 1.9 million.
Oh, yeah, we'll pay.
That's,
Oh, sorry, go on.
that's the number that the Fox Valley Career Center will collect from all of the districts, the estimated amount
Yep.
based on the number of students that they have currently enrolled for fall.
Got it. So where's the reimbursement part?
In the fall, we will look at this year's budget
Okay,
and we'll figure out how much did they collect, how much did they spend, what's the leftover, and divide it up based on the number of students that they had participate.
okay. So it's not an additional reimbursement. It's not like the state's reimbursing for anything like that. It's just whatever's left over.
We true up.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Kaneland's portion of the tuition is approximately 700,000. I think this year it was 725 or 35. So in our Kaneland budget, there's a line item for Fox Valley tuition, and it's got that 700 in there,
Got it.
1,000.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We as a district, I don't want to use the term dominate, but we have the highest enrollment in the Fox
We
Valley. Is that-
do. Because it's most convenient.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Whereas outside districts, their students lose a period in the travel time. So because of the 20 minutes to get here and back, so somewhere they lose a period, whereas our students don't. So we're able to get more classes in for our students.
It's also one place where we benefit from transportation because we don't have to pay for that, but all the other districts have to transport their kids back and forth. Unlike the rest of our transportation costs, where we've got 142 square miles, at least for Fox Valley, they're right here on campus at the high school. So that's a benefit too for the district.
So I don't have a question, but, I forget, does Dr. Burchell ever report, because he gets a lot of donations, a lot of businesses provide things, like, you know, like, I know our fire trucks and stuff like that, does he ever, so we can,
So I bring those
Right.
to the board on his behalf. And whenever we get one over $500 per board policy, I will report that. And if you go back and look throughout, the past year, you'll see the ones that are from Fox Valley.
sorry, I meant like at end of the year of like, hey, here's all the, I know, like you said, you give him, like if there's over a certain amount, but, is there some kind of recognition, because he's able to keep a lot of his expenditures down because he has a lot of relationships with the community organizations. I didn't know if there was any time or if there's any way, like, I guess we could talk to Dr. Burchell and find out what that looks like, but.
I don't believe he has an official recognition.
No,
for any-
we do have that with our PTO and PTNs where you'll bring that compilation,
Right.
but with the Career Center, based on the timing, when it is over 500, that would come at each respective board meeting as they're received.
Yeah, okay. I was curious. I was trying to think in my mind. I know we talk about the boosters and we talk about everybody else, but I didn't know if he actually presented or if you presented
I
something like
present
that
on his behalf.
when they come in. Okay.
Yep, as the administrative agent,
Okay.
just like I do on behalf of the high school and anybody else in the district.
Yeah, no,
It's a
that's great.
donation.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Anyone else? All right, with no further discussion, I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the 2023-2024 Fox Valley Career Center tentative budget as presented.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley?
Aye.
Dr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Fleisner?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Second item of new business is the approval of the 2023-2024 tentative budget for Kaneland, District 302. Dr. Fuchs.
All right, this one will be a little bit longer, and at any point you have a question, I encourage you to interrupt me so that we can address it at that time. Okay, I think that that's really important. The information that I'll be sharing will come from two places. You want to open up your binders, and these are binders that you can keep. Additionally, in September, when we do the final budget, there is a tab ready for that I'll give you a hard copy that you can put right in your binder. Inside the cover of your binder is a copy of the presentation that we'll be looking at on the screen, as well as one other document that I'll be referring to in just a little bit. All right, so the first thing that I'd like to ask you to do is to turn past the page in your binder that has all of your names on it. I would like to start with the budget calendar. I want to point out that the 23-24 budget calendar started back in October 22. If you'll look all the way down, we're almost done. Tonight is finalizing, or the board, June 26th, the board is adopting the tentative budget. We only have a little bit more to go. We'll work this summer to continue to update the budget, similar to what I mentioned with Fox Valley. I'll give the board an update in August if that's necessary. And then September 11th, we'll have a budget hearing and the board will finalize the budget. So for those of you who are new board members, keep in mind that if you want to make changes to our process or ask questions about the budget, not ask questions, but make changes, you would be affecting the 24-25 budget, and we'll start having those discussions in October, November, December, where we'll be passing the levy and doing some budget work with assumptions. But I just wanted to point out, we're right on schedule for the budget calendar. Behind that calendar is another calendar. This calendar has all of the months, and it also tells you where in school code things are required. So some things we do because it's best practice, other things we do because it's required. And so I've got that list of the calendar in your binders. Following that second page of the calendar is the budget narrative. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that budget narrative. On page 5 of the budget narrative, again, you can see June 26th and September 11th are important dates. You can also know from this first page that this budget was put together by a lot of people. It's not done individually. It includes principals, office staff, transportation, technology. It's all good. I'm good. It's working. It's okay. Thank you. And buildings and grounds. So lots and lots of people have their hands and input into the budget that you have presented in front of you. Without all of these people, the budget would be prone to many, many more errors. So the first thing we're going to do then is I want to discuss this year's budget, the 22-23 budget. I just want to point out a few things. First of all, that budget ends June 30th, so coming up. However, note, all expenditures are already done. So we have to stop expending money so that we can get the board packet together, because in the board packet, you approve all expenditures. So I can't bring them to you if we don't finish. So we finish expenditures, but revenues, we book revenues all the way through June 30th. So if we get a state payment or a check from somebody, we'll continue to book revenues. This summer, the auditors have already been in once. They'll be back. And so they're already starting to audit this year's books. They pull invoices, they pull receipts. They're starting their work. That work will be done October, November, depending on how long it takes. And we have an independent audit every year as required by school code. So on page 6 then, I want to talk about the 22-23 budget review. All of those bullet points are on page 6 in your binder and or on the screen. So our budget you're going to hear me talk about two things tonight. One, the operating budget, and two, the total budget. The operating budget consists of 4 of the funds: education, operations and maintenance, transportation, and working cash. The operating budget is the budget with which we have most control over. The school district itself has very, very little control over its revenues. We have a lot of control over our expenditures. The total budget then is another budget that you'll hear me talk about. That is the operating budget plus a few of the other funds. The other funds that we don't consider operating would be our debt service funds. That's where our bond and interest payments are paid. It would be our IMRF fund, our Social Security fund, and I think there's one more. Nope, that's it. Is everything else. IMRF, Social Security, because we don't have any more money in capital projects. Land cash. On the land cash fund, it gets squeezed up into the O&M fund. for the purposes of the state form. So, but let's talk about the operating budget. That's where I'll spend most of my time. We adopted a $72.2 million operating budget. Our total budget was $87.5 million. Our operating expenditures as of June 22 were about 71 million. Total expenditures 86.2. Please remember, audited amounts will vary in October. Our budgets are done on a cash basis. Money comes in, we record it. Money goes out, we record it. Our auditors do a modified accrual accounting system. So they're going to look at some of those state payments, and if we were supposed to get them within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year, they're going to accrue that back. Additionally, some of our, say for example, utilities, for June, they get billed in July. They'll accrue those utilities back to June where they're supposed to be. The purpose of a modified accrual audit is to give you a true picture of what the fiscal year looked like. The auditors will explain that when they come in October. Our enrollment decreased in 22-23 by about 67 students, or 1.6%. You can see the 3 salary increases that the groups received for 22-23. We received state payments and evidence-based funding by about $7.3 million. That was about $100,000 more than the prior year. That's one thing I'm going to mention now, and I'll probably mention it again. With regard to revenues, for the purpose of the 23-24 budget, everything, almost everything except for the tax levy, are estimates. The state has not told me yet how much you're going to get for EBF. They haven't told me how much I'm going to get for my federal grants. They haven't told me how much I'm going to get for my state grants. So what we typically do is we listen and kind of pay attention. Are they going to go up or going to go down? Usually it's not much different. So at this time of the budget, we keep it the same. If we got 7.23 million last year, that's what we budget this year. Then in the summer, when we learn what that number is, we will update the budget, and that's the number you would learn about or see in September when we do our final budget. Let's see. We are currently waiting for one more mandated categorical payment of about $800,000. $750,000 will go into the transportation fund, and about $50,000 would go into the ed fund. I am hopeful that we get that by August 31st, because then it will count for this fiscal year, which would be helpful. Let's go to the next slide. We are projected to end this fiscal year with a $1.2 million deficit, depending on receipts of those state payments. And I'd like to ask you to pull out the extra handout that was in the front of your binder. I want to explain how this handout works so that you can see historically what the district has done. There are 3 sections, or 3 rows, and 5 fiscal years. Fiscal year 19 through this year 23. 19 through 22, I am using audited numbers. 23, I'm using what I have in the system that is consistent what's in your packet tonight. The first section shows you budgeted revenues to actual revenues for each of those fiscal years. At the bottom of that section, you'll see a percentage. For example, in fiscal year 19, you see 101.79%. That means that year we collected 1.79% more than we budgeted. Your difference there is a little over $1 million. As you look through that, you can see in fiscal year 20, we were very close, 100.29%. Fiscal year 21, we didn't quite get everything we expected and only collected 99.32% of what we budgeted. The next year, 102.74%. This year, 99.47%. So part of our deficit is comprised of the fact that we didn't quite get all of the revenues that we had budgeted. I'll be explaining that in just a few minutes. The next section is budgeted expenditures to actual expenditures. It works similarly. You can, except for this time, under 100% means you didn't spend everything you budgeted. Over 100% means you spent more than you budgeted. You can see consistently across the row that we underspent. Over 5 years, our average is 97.91, or approximately 98%. So out of a $72 million budget, we spent 98%. But again, we didn't spend all of it. We were conservative, so that's a positive. The last section shows you actual revenues to actual expenditures. This is where the rubber meets the road. In fiscal year 19, we were at 94.6%, quite a bit under. Fiscal year 20, 98.2. Fiscal year 21, 100.44. You'll notice we went over budget by about $270,000. Fiscal year 22, 99. Fiscal year 23, 101.77. What I want to point out is that that was planned, specifically in relationship to capital expenditures. The board said, we need to do some things. We said that, you agreed, and that's why you see a deficit. It's primarily having to do with expenditures, or not expenditures, but capital. But something important to note, our ed fund was over, O&M fund was over, and transportation fund was over. So we do have a little bit of work to do to bring that balance back in check, to make sure that we don't consistently have a deficit, end the year with a deficit. The board has, in the past, I would say 10 years, has directed the administration to try to get as close as you can to balanced. One strategy that we use in order to do that is we bring a deficit budget to you because we know it's conservative. We've underestimated our revenues, we've overestimated our expenditures. That center section where you see under 100%, we do not have the legal authority as a district to overexpend your expenditures. So we're very careful not to do that. We tend not to amend our budget because when we amend the budget, it messes things up in your planning. The budget is a plan, and so that's how we use it. Additionally, the last bullet point here is that we continue to use Forecast 5 to do our budget planning. That's what I'll bring the board in December. I'll show you where we are. You'll have heard the audit and how we're going to straighten out some of these funds that are deficit spending at this point. So now I want to talk about the unaudited discussion on actual revenues to actual expenditures. And I've got the information. It's on slide 6 or page 3 of your presentation. So actual expenditures were $372,355 less than budgeted. That's less than 1%. It's around 0.5%. So we were very close on that. And we still might get some payments. And if we do, it'll show up in the audit and it won't look like that. Actual expenditures, we were 1.2 million less than budgeted. That's because we had projected a $2.1 million deficit. We're coming in with a 1.2 million, so we had about a $900 to $1 million swing, which again, on a $70 million budget, that's under 2% of a swing. Let's go to the next page here. I start with revenues and I tell you why or how. In revenues, the one area where we consistently struggle at this point in the year and in our budget, because we don't get that number till October. We've so far received about 372,000 less than expected in our transportation fund. I was doing this presentation and last year I noticed the transportation fund and the revenues was $600,000 over what we expected. So it really ebbs and flows based on how much money the state has available. And again, we won't know what that number is until October usually. That number, here's how it's generated. All of the school districts finish their fiscal year in June. And then in July, we file what's called the transportation claim. So there's a 25-page booklet on how to do the claim. And we put together all of our expenditures from the 22-23 school year. They're due August 15th to the state. The state reviews all 900 districts. They determine how much money they can reimburse, and then they divide it up. And by October, November, we finally hear what we're going to get. So truly, that number, we do the best we can with trying to estimate. And this year, we got less, but they still owe us one payment. So maybe it'll come in, and then again, in the audit, it won't look like this. Or like last year, we overestimated or under, and we got in more. So revenue, we don't have a lot of control over, and that's the biggest one that was challenged this year.
Have we received all our IDEA funds for this year, or are we waiting on some of those too?
We're waiting, but only because we have June expenditures that need to be reported. Once we report those June expenditures, we will get reimbursed. Everything that we've reported has been reimbursed. And then when we get that reimbursement in July, that's one of the things that the auditors will accrue back to June because it was for June expenditures.
Correct.
But to this point, we've gotten everything that we've submitted.
Okay, and our child count for IDEA, has that gone up, down? What's that look like?
You know what? I'll need to check with Mrs. Eggleston, who's in the
Okay,
audience.
okay, no,
Do
that's,
you know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
okay, that's, no, I'm. I
Okay.
just, you know,
Thank you.
because that's fairly
I'm
significant.
gonna say it's roughly about the same, but
Static, okay. Okay,
Thanks for asking.
Can you just explain what IDA is for the new
Sure.
people?
Individuals with Disability in Education Act, federal funding, one of the major sources for special education, the actual education, teaching. Am I
Yeah.
correct?
We get reimbursed for a portion of our teacher salaries, a portion of our nurse salaries, social workers, psychologists. Yeah, special ed,
Transportation too,
Yeah.
that usually comes in
all related to special education, and those are federal dollars.
federal pass-through.
So that's the revenue side. Let's switch over to the expenditure side, where again, we have a little bit more control. So this first slide just has the summary of where we are. You can see in the education fund, we underspent by about 1.1 million. That's about 2% of that education budget. One benchmark that our board has used in the past, if it's within 3%, it's not allowable, but acceptable. When you're talking about this kind of, money. O&M, how about that? We came within $5,872 of our expenditures, so that's 0.1%. I think that's the closest I've ever come, to right on. So, good job, Mr. Payton.
Gonna go out and play lottery.
That's right. Transportation, we had about 49,000 underspent or 0.9%. And the working cash was 1.1. That, if you'll remember, the working cash this year, we did a one-time transfer. I put that in the expenditure column because it was moved to O&M and then spent out of O&M. So, and that was the 1.1% there. Let's go on and talk a little bit more about expenditures. In the ed fund, here's where some of the underspending comes in. Salaries and benefits was the most of it. Salaries, we underspent by about 460,000 out of 37 million. And that represents some of our unfilled positions. Benefits, we underspent about 660,000 out of 10.6 million. That one I am still working on getting tighter. And in this year's budget, I tightened it up, hopefully not too much. Here's the issue with that. Right now, we're still in the process of hiring people, and we don't know what kind of benefits they're gonna need when they come in. So we put them at the family level, which is high. Some of them come in as single. And so I'd like to figure out a way that my crystal ball can tell me how many are gonna take single and how many of the other tiers to get a little bit closer. Again, I believe I tightened that up. We'll have to wait and see how I did next year on that. O&M, I didn't give you any explanation because we were so close. And then transportation, we were salary and benefits about 103,000. And I'm gonna tell you that's because we had to combine a lot of routes. We didn't take some trips, and it all had to do with the driver shortage. There were just some things we couldn't get done, and so they showed up in the purchase services because we hired various companies or charter buses to do some things. Otherwise, most line items were pretty well not spot on. There were some over, some under, as there always is, but these were the big ones. That's basically all I'm going to share with you on this year's budget. I want to let you know in your binder, in the summary section, pages 12, 13, and 14, that is this year's budget. You've got your revenue to actual, you've got your expenditure budget to actual, and then you've got that same third chart of actual revenue to actual expenditures. At this time, I would ask, are there any other questions on the 22-23? Otherwise, I'd like to spend the rest of the evening focused on the 23-24 budget.
Yeah, one quick question. Okay, so we budgeted last year for a deficit of 2.1 million. We actually only were in deficit 1.2 million-ish. Does that 1.2 million roll into the next fiscal year?
No,
The
the
negative.
900,
The negative, right?
yeah.
So we
if we-
spent 1.2 million more, so we owe out 1.2 million somewhere still.
Yep.
Does that
comes out
roll
of-
in?
That comes out of fund balance.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So let me,
We did this
actually,
on purpose.
here's where you could see it. Turn to the summary section, first page.
Yep.
Now, this is actually talking about the coming up year, okay? But I can show it to you in here. So, on this summary section, the first column is what's called the unaudited fund balance. At the end of a fiscal year, if you end up with revenues over expenditures, that will increase or add to your fund balance. That fund balance sits in there, in the fund. I invest that money that's sitting in there so that we're earning interest on it. In a year like this year, where we expended more than we took in, it reduces the fund balance.
It's our savings account.
Yes,
Got it.
we could call it that.
Sure. No, it makes sense now.
So,
Yep.
and
So that's how that works. Yep.
I'm just gonna add, and Julian, correct me if I'm wrong, but philosophically, the last few boards, we've been very conservative about what's in that fund balance.
Yes.
We don't want a lot in there because every dollar should go to students, right? And so if there's a lot in that fund balance, it's money that we're not spending it on students, right? But this is why we had a plan for a deficit, because we had a little extra, and we wanted to get that fund balance down and get it into, impact students if we could.
Fair enough.
And we do have a fund balance policy.
We do.
That says that we should keep 45 days in there at our lowest point. We measure that in June. We are pretty darn close to right at the 45. I actually didn't measure it for tonight to talk about it, but I certainly could, bring that back at some point. I usually talk about it, in the financial projections, and or the auditors will talk about it too sometimes. But as Dr. Lawler said, we've tried to keep it as close as we can, because we don't want to grow the fund balance, but we don't also want to shrink it too much either. So it's that magic, trying to figure out where you want to land.
It's our rainy day fund, right? So if there's an emergency or whatever,
Absolutely.
that's how we make it.
No, it's perfect. Thanks for the explanation.
Yep. Alrighty.
Good questions.
So let's talk about what we're doing tonight then. I'm going to ask the board to adopt a $74.5 million tentative operating budget for a total budget of 88.6. This is about 2.3 million more than last year's, or about 3.1%. Our revenues are expected to be approximately 70.7, which is about 1 million more than what we received this past year. Notice sometimes I compare budget to budget, sometimes budget to actual, so make sure you note that when you're reading. The operating expenditures are expected to be about 74.5, which is about 4.8 more than what was spent in 22-23. That's about a 7% increase. Remember that you have two big triggers, salaries and benefits. You've got most of your certified salaries are around 4.3%. Your support staff salary increases are at 6.5%. Administrators are low at 5% increase, and then retirees are at 6%. That 6.9 includes capital projects, which we know we're doing a bunch again to try to get some of our parking lots in better shape, because they're over 20, 21, 22 years old and have never been replaced. So that's been a big push to try to get some of it taken care of. Other highlights. So what we have here then is the ed fund is showing approximately $800,000 deficit. When I did the levy in December of 22, I purposely not moved, because I didn't move money from fund to fund. I planned for the ed fund to receive more of the levy and the transportation fund to receive less of the levy, because the transportation fund was growing and there's no need to have it grow. The ed fund grows at a faster pace. It needed more money. So when we did the levy, we planned to have more in the ed fund. Your O&M budget, $2.4 million deficit. Again, we are planning some of that, but some of that is because the John Stewart parking lot didn't get finished last year. So that 400,000 came out of last year and got pushed into this year on top of the projects that we're doing. But as you remember from the last board meeting, next year, we are only planning right now a little over 800,000 in capital projects. So if you use that number for the 24-25 budget, this will come back to a more reasonable amount. Transportation fund, we've got an estimated $637,000 deficit. Again, you've got extra in the fund balance. If you look at that summary page, you can see that transportation currently has just under 4 million. And with that 600,000, it'll still be at 3.3 million.
Dr. Fuchs, it might be helpful to explain like the problem of like, well, why don't we just move money from the transportation fund to the ed fund? Like there's an issue
Yep.
with that, right?
So, it is legal to do that, but oftentimes it's not advisable. Typically because if you levy in the transportation fund, the people who are your taxpayers, they are expecting that money be spent in the transportation fund. So at the time of the levy, you can identify where you need your money and plan appropriately. And by doing so, you don't over levy in transportation, causing a need for a transfer. And so that's what I've done is I planned where we need it most in the ed fund. And that's why you can see some deficits projected in those others. Is that what you were?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Cause so,
So-
it sounds like, well, I'll just move this money.
Yep.
It's a harder.
We do have a $3.7 million deficit. That is a little higher than I like. It's primarily salaries, benefits, and capital expenditures at this point. I am hopeful that we get some good news on the revenue side and that some of our expenditures come in under. At this point, that's what we have to do, is just be patient. I've got the salary increases that were board approved, listed on slide 11. All right, these are the assumptions that I've used to generate this budget. For those of you who are new, these are the same assumptions that we're going to talk about in December for the following year. The tax levy, I'll bring to you estimated amount, but this tax levy will bring in about 3.1 million more. Our state EBF, evidence-based funding, that's the big state money. We'll find that out in July, probably, maybe August, how much it's gonna be. We've generally gotten about $100,000 a year more. That 100,000 is not currently in this budget. Once I know that it's coming, I'll add it, and that'll be one of the notes that I tell you in August. And so those are some of like the changes that you'll hear about. Let's see, in terms of mandated categoricals, that's transportation regular, transportation special ed, and some other special ed reimbursements. Again, I use what we had for this year until I learn what's coming. Federal revenues are projected the same. Similarly, they come within 1% or 2% of the previous year. So those are my revenue assumptions. And there's only two sides, revenues, expenditures. Any questions on the revenue assumptions? Okay, expenditure assumptions. I've got the salaries in there. I want to let you know, those are pretty close. We keep a ginormous, that's a technical term, ginormous spreadsheet with every person, every salary, every increase, and every extra duty, we budget for subs, we budget for extra hours. Again, large spreadsheet on all of that information, which makes up about 75% of our budget. So we want to be close on that. And as you saw, we were within $500,000 at 37 million. So we were pretty good on that, generally speaking. We did approve some new positions. In March, it was 3.5. We added 2 more in May. We'll keep an eye on that over the summer if we get some hot spots, I call it, or you need additional teachers. Our health benefits went up almost 10%. That was disappointing. I'd like to see it closer to 5%. But the market is a little bit crazy right now. We do have a new broker, the Horton Group, that was a public bid, and they have begun to work with us effective July 1, or will be. And so maybe there's something that they can do to help us control our costs and our increases. Our curricular for new materials, we generally give them about 400,000, and that's for new materials, including new software, new textbooks, new workbooks, whatever they need for 400,000, and that's K-12. If you ask them if that's enough, please know the answer is no. We could always use more money in curriculum, and they will find good ways to use it for the education of our children. It's just that we have to draw a line somewhere, and this is where we've drawn it at this point. Technology is about 550,000. That's the same as last year. School buses, we buy typically 5 one-year-old replacements. This year cost about just under 30,000 more than the prior year. The one-year-old buses work really well for us. We can get a good deal, and we don't take any bus that has had the first year problems, and they come with miles usually around 5 to 10,000. Every now and then we get something around 12 or 13,000. So it's worked really well. Capital projects, we've got 2.7 million in this year's budget. It's about 700,000 more than last year. And again, we're doing some significant projects that need to be done. And so but we know that in 24, 25, we haven't planned for that. We planned right now for the 800,000. The board still has the outstanding topic of, are you going to do paving? Are you going to do the track? One or the other, or both. But again, we can discuss that in July, and I can add those expenditures to the final budget in September, once a decision is made. This is a revenue summary. I think that I have covered most of it. I would say that 75% comes from our local property taxes, 5% comes from other local, 18% or 17% state, and 3% federal. Those percentages shift very little from year to year, year over year. Very little, it's very consistent. Expenditure summary then. 50% comes from or is spent on instruction, another 45% on supporting instruction. That's 95% of our budget. Instructional support is your administration, technical, technology, and logistical to support and facilitate and enhance instruction. My 3 funds, the Ed Fund, Transportation Fund, and O&M Fund, are in here with some descriptions. Your Ed Fund is your largest. The revenues come from EBF, the levy, and mandated categoricals. You've got your increases in both salaries and FTEs and your projected deficit. Similarly, transportation, we know what it's used for. For that fund, you get tax levy money and state reimbursement. They're behind one payment. We bought 5 one-year-old buses, projected deficit. O&M, that's the second largest fund right now. It's used to maintain our buildings and properties. As you know, we are in desperate need of some updates. The revenues for that fund only come from the tax levy and some other small fees. I've got all of our projects that we are doing this summer in there, which is in this budget, and then the largest projected deficit. I wanted to point out to you in your binders, the 4th or 5th tab, bond schedules. If any of you are wondering where we're at with our bonds, I put in there some of the debt capacity information. At this time, oh, let me tell you what that capacity is. School districts are limited. Community unit school districts are limited to 13.8% of their EAV can be debt, meaning borrowing, referendum. You can now borrow up to $95.9 million if you needed or wanted to. And you can see in here, we still have bond payments to pay. Each year, our bond payments are just about $12 million, 12.4 million. And that is listed on the third page of the bond schedule. I've got the 24 fiscal year highlighted. That money is collected from the levy, and it is outside of the tax cap. The tax cap applies to only your operating funds. The bond and interest levy is outside of that tax cap, and it's collected separately, but still from your taxpayers. Our bonds are going to be paid off in 2029. So you have about 6 more fiscal years. You're almost done paying off your debt. A lot of that debt, Blackberry, McDowell, Harder, and additions to Meredith or KMAC and Blackberry Creek. I believe that that's everything I have for all of you tonight. And the recommendation for the vote is on page 10.
I have a question. This year's a bargaining year, correct? How does that unknown variable get taken into account in the current year's budget?
I increased the attorney line item for expenditures.
Okay.
But for this year, it doesn't impact it at all. It's for the 24, 25 and beyond.
So you would show that potentially in the projections in December.
Yes.
Anything else, guys? Okay, with no further questions, at this point, I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the 2023-2024 tentative budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Mr. McCauley?
Aye.
Dr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Mankiewicz?
Aye.
Mr. Fleischer?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Passes. The third item of new business is the school safety update, and we'll turn this one over to Dr. Fuchs as well.
Okay.
What I'll just share briefly before Dr. Fuchs starts. If you recall, this was a topic for future agenda that came up from our board in May, and I know Dr. Fuchs, you were probably going to mention that, but this is a typically in this report is more exhaustive than what a typical report would be, because we do have new board members and wanted to make sure we kind of gave a full overview as opposed to just the updated changes that take place on a year to year. So typically this report wouldn't be quite this long, but because it was a topic for future agenda, we wanted to make sure we include all of it here tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Layton.
Thank you.
Similarly, I have not included everything that we do, because not everything is appropriate for everybody to know. And so what I have included is any of the practices that our parents and community would benefit from knowing.
So you're talking about safety guidelines, those types of things. Correct.
We have a number of required practices, and we are in compliance with everything that is required at all of our schools. So as the board, that's an important thing for you to know. I've listed all of the required practices, including evacuation drills, bus drills, law enforcement drills, severe weather drills, Additionally, we are required to host a meeting with all of our first responders. We do that on an annual basis in August. And so, we've got this year's meeting set. We have an agenda for that meeting, and we always have really good attendance from all of our first responders. Are there any questions on the required practices?
I think I just want to note quickly, one of the highlights of that meeting is after we had the general meeting, general safety, then each of the buildings break down by administration and the local officials, both all the first responders, so they can talk more definitively on their building, because there are some general practices that we follow across the district, but then each of the buildings have slightly different dynamics, and they spend time talking about those on a building by building basis.
Yep, and when they're in their groups, they also plan future dates of when they can actually meet in individual schools with those first responders. So not only, because this meeting is usually held at KMAC, and then they get the dates where they can meet at Stewart, Shields, etc., with their own first responders. So they talk about that, they do the dates, and anything else that's they want to talk about that's beneficial for those schools. So, with regard to ongoing practices, we do have a security task force that meets regularly. The purpose is to discuss and review security procedures and practices. Some of the committee members include the high school and middle school deans, the elementary assistant principals, the SRO, school resource officer. Also, we have Mr. Wolf for technology, Mrs. Smith for transportation, Mr. Payton for buildings and grounds, so that we can make sure that everybody's hearing the same thing. If something's happening on buses, in our buildings, in our bathrooms, the right people are at the table. There's also administration from each level that participate. This year we're talking about, it's been a while since we've had a community meeting. So we're talking about ways in which we might do that parent meeting for safety. I think the last one we did was in either 17 or 19. And so we're talking about having one of those. Additionally, we have administrative support. Mr. Payton, myself, and the SRO either all attend or attend at least one of us a monthly meeting at the Regional Office of Education, where the Regional Safety Committee meets. The ROE often has grant opportunities. They often bring in guest speakers, and then whoever attends that meeting brings back the information to the safety committee. A lot of times, Mr. Payton will help us with that. We have key management at all of our buildings. Most of you know that we have swipe card readers. By having key management, it helps so that we don't have lost keys out there and that people can't just get in whenever they want. Additionally, with the swipe readers, if we ever need to know who was in a building at a particular time or door, Mr. Wolf is able to look that up and get it to us very quickly. We have visitor management. That's our Raptor software in each of our buildings, including the district office, where visitors get their driver's license run through a state database for sex offenders and also for felonies. They wear name tags. We regularly remind our staff and students to not prop open doors. That's one of the biggest challenges, is making sure that all of the doors are regularly locked and not propped open. We have video surveillance. Right now, we feel like we've added quite a few cameras in areas where they're needed. Video surveillance will not stop anything, but it helps us to know what happened and for discipline for students. With the first responders, I forgot to mention that we update our crisis plan and procedures, but additionally, all principals do that at one of the first meetings of the year. And then they also go over that with students as appropriate. In 22-23, we implemented the I Love You Guys program that is now being implemented across Kane County. So we are right in line with the other school districts in Kane County. Our language is all being used the same. So if you have substitutes that are subbing here in Geneva or here in St. Charles, they should all be familiar with the I Love You Guys because it's being trained again all over Kane County. So that's good.
Could you elaborate a little bit on what that program is?
Sure. It's a program, first of all, the program was developed by the father who lost the daughter, not in Columbine, the other one. It was in Colorado. No, Sandy Hook was New Jersey. Anyway, Colorado. And he developed it with a team of professionals. And what it is it's consistent language. So oftentimes we'll say lockdown, but lockdown isn't specific enough in the sense of, is there an immediate threat in the building? Is there an immediate threat outside of the building? So they use language that helps everybody to know where the threat is. And it's on a poster, a colored poster that the kids can identify with. And it's posted in every classroom. Additionally, we've sent these posters, these flyers home for parents. They do a nice job explaining it so that parents can go through the various lockdowns, basically, with their students. So, I didn't include it here, but we've sent it out twice. We sent it out early September last year, and then we sent it out after one of the incidents in, I think, winter. It was, I think, February when we sent it out the second time, attached it. And we send it across the board in the email to all parents. But what it does, again, is it provides language and procedures so that everybody knows what to do.
Thank you.
That information is shared with our first responders also.
Yes. I talked about this next one, and Dr. Lane also talked about it. In individual buildings, the first responders meet with the administration and sometimes staff. Additionally, we have officers that regularly walk around and check our buildings, both during the school day and in the evenings. They check for locked doors, things like that, and they let us know when we need to work on something. In the evening or the middle of the night, if there's an unlocked door, they call either Mr. Payton or myself, and we make sure that that door gets locked so that nobody's able to get in. They also visit classrooms and try to work with students. I know at the middle school, the Sugar Grove Police Department is very active at lunchtime, just talking to students and letting them be familiar with police officers. We definitely have robust support from our community. In the event of a crisis, we have lots and lots of people who help us to make sure that all of our students have support, and they continue to do that. In terms of debriefing crisis events, for example, after the fire at Fox Valley in the spring and May, the team that was on site got together and we held a debriefing meeting. We do that regularly. We talk about what did we do right, what could we have done better, what do we need to follow up on, and what are we going to do different next time so that we can learn from those events. There's never an event that's the same event twice, so you have to learn from each one. And our first responders participate in those meetings. If it's the fire department, the police department, they come. Most of the administration is on a first name basis with the chiefs of the various departments because we see them and speak to them regularly. We have a wonderful Kaneland community in terms of first responders. At this time, are there any questions on the ongoing practices? New practices. We are hopeful that we will have an SRO at Harder Middle School this year in addition to the high school. We're still working on the details, so I'll bring that back as soon as they're finalized. Traffic control, similar to Doberman and Kesslinger, we want to add traffic control to Harder and Esker. We've been asked for it for a little while now, and we believe that this is the right time to make it happen so that we can get it before something happens. So we've been pretty lucky, but we don't want our luck to run out. Vaping, as you know, is a significant concern. So we are planning several, through the security committee, we are planning several educational programs in the upcoming year, as well as stricter discipline for vaping. We're trying to work with our local law enforcements to issue citations. Some of our municipalities will allow that and some will not. So we're trying to figure out how best to deal with that with regard to having schools in multiple jurisdictions. So that's still getting developed in the process. Lastly, similarly, the fighting prevention, we know that we've had a number of fights following COVID. And so we are continuing to work with our teachers and social workers on helping students with self-management of their behavior. Law enforcement when it's needed, if it's serious. And then also, I can't express it enough, parents want to know who did what and what's going to happen to that student. Please know, we can't tell people that. There's a federal law called FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, that prevents school administration, school officials from sharing anything that's related to a student and their privacy. One way that I help parents understand that when that opportunity comes up is that think about if it was your son or daughter, would you want the rest of the district to know what they did and what happened? Generally, at that point, they're able to say, probably not. So most parents, once you explain and talk with them, they do understand that the kids have the right to privacy. Please know that we do suspend students. Every board packet you get, except for during the summer, there's a list of bus suspensions, regular suspensions. You can know that discipline is happening. Because that's one of the other concerns is, well, they're just getting away with nothing. They're getting away with everything. That's simply just not true. It's happening. But every situation, again, is individual, and we can't share that information. The administration takes safety and security very seriously. We get trained, we train our staff, we try to depend on students and their families. If you see something, say something. Oftentimes, that's one of the first ways in which we learn about potential situations. And so we want to encourage our families and our students to continue reporting. We will investigate each of those reports until we are sure that all of our Kaneland students and staff, including administration, because we work in these buildings also, are safe to the best of our ability. We know that we can't prevent everything, but we certainly try to do our very best.
Can you share what are the ways people can report? There's on the website, there's parent, there's phone number, things like that.
We have a variety of ways in which they can report. First of all, on our main website and each of our school websites, in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a yellow triangle, and I believe it says safety. If you click on that, it will take you to our safety page. And on that safety page, you can call a number, you can text a number, or you can email the address. Additionally, any student at any time or parent can call a teacher, email a teacher, report it to their counselor, report it to an adult who can then report it to administration, who will take it from there and do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm looking at the new practices and I think those are great. And I'm sure there'll be more as the years come out. What can we do? What can the board do to help assist you with getting these practices and continue to add more practices? So what do you need from us?
It's a great question. Typically, I would say the financial support and trust
Sure.
that when we bring the SRO and it's another expense, hopefully we'll be able to find a way to offset it as we always try or something, but continue to support us with financial support is one. Continue to help us support us with parents. When they come to you, please send them to us so that we can have conversations, better understand what their needs are, and help them understand what we're doing. A lot of times when we sit down individually, we can't share student names and things like that, but we can give them a little more information than you can put in a press release.
Sure.
Dr. Lawler, along the same lines, one other thing, the Director of Communication position that the board has supported and encouraged us to move forward with. After we have that position, that will help our overall general communication across the district too. Because I know some of the feedback that we receive, and most schools receive, if something happens in a building at a certain time, our families are going to know much sooner from their students typically than they will hear from us. Because our first step is to secure the environment, find out what happened, investigate it, see if we have first responders that are needed, our authorities needed. So at this point, that would be our first move. And then what we'll always do is follow up with the appropriate communication with the information that we can share, and then try to initiate that dialogue so that it's two-way with our families. So that piece will be very helpful moving forward.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Yep.
Sorry. So in regards to the fighting prevention, it's obviously an issue that's been talked about quite a bit, and in this portion here, there's you refer to Senate Bill 100 and discuss the zero tolerance policy in quotes, and also mention that we cannot. Policy provides that the harshest forms of punishment may only be used for students who pose a threat to the school or community. So can you elaborate a little bit on, so first of all, zero tolerance policy. So basically we can't come in and say, if you're caught fighting, you're suspended,
Or expelled.
or expelled.
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be, we have to look at it on a case by case basis. But in addition, the harshest punishment to me, it's a little ambiguous in that, are we saying no expulsions or expulsions will be looked at?
Yeah.
And to what extent how are we restricted in order to combat this potential problem if it's not already a problem at the
Yeah,
schools?
good question. One of the things that we are going to do every summer, we have 2 administrative retreats with both cabinet and the ad team. Ad team, we are having Maureen Lemon come in the beginning of August to review Senate Bill 100, review those steps and those procedures. What's happened with Senate Bill 100 was it didn't come from from Kane County or this area. It came, I believe, more from the east in toward Chicago. It was more of a there were too many districts over identifying and over suspending and expelling students. So what came with that was Senate Bill 100, which is a tight set of guidelines on what is a substantial disruption to the school day. And while we believe that almost anything that happens in our school is a substantial disruption, the law sees it otherwise. It has to be multiple days of multiple lockdowns. It's just something way more than just an administrator spending 2 or 3 hours investigating a fight, looking at videos, and then suspending a student for a day or two. That, in the eyes of the legal system, is not a substantial disruption. So what we can do is we can suspend, and we can suspend for fights, and we do suspend for fights. The challenging piece is that the substantial disruption to the school day is the saying. So that's what we have to use as our guidance. And then also there's a step of restorative justice that we have to use with each student, which after they are suspended or disciplined, there's potentially a reintegration meeting. Who do they meet with? What are the steps of their reintegration back into the school? And it's not the same for every student. If it's a student with a threat, they may have to check back in with the dean every day for the rest of the school year to show them their book bag, what was in the bag, do they have anything in there? If it was a fight, We might change student schedules. We might pull a student out of a class if they continue to be a disruption to the other student or to that environment. So as Dr. Fuchs said earlier, each one of the situations are truly different and the dynamics are different, but we do have to take Senate Bill 100 and many of those guidelines into consideration when we do suspend and for how many days. Students with a 504 or an IEP also have additional guidelines in there that we need to follow as far as corrective actions and restrictions, but it's truly on a case by case. But when and where we have those, excuse me, when and where we have those cases, we do discipline accordingly.
So the action we take in regards to the discipline is based on a legal definition of, like, and you use the substantial disruption. So basically, we have to be able to provide an argument that this, as defined by this bill,
By Senate Bill 100.
yeah, that they have substantially disrupted,
Yes.
and therefore we can take this level of punishment or this degree of punishment.
Yes.
Action.
Yes. And
Punishable action.
Yes, and Senate Bill 100 clearly defines that. A 3 to 5, 1 to 2 day suspension is primarily for these behaviors. A 3 to 5 day suspension is something that this is what took place. There's ongoing threats, there's fear of retribution. The students who were a part of it continue to exhibit a threat moving forward. So there's set factors of each instance that we have to take for each of the days of suspension that we can be set out for students. And when we've had Senate Bill 100, almost 10 years now or so, 8 to 10 years, we've had that, maybe 10 years, maybe, right about 10 years, that's been a state policy, state law that we have to follow. Other questions?
No?
Thank you.
At this point, there's no recommended action for this one, so we'll move on to the next final item of new business, which is the approval of the change orders. And we will switch it up back to Dr. Fuchs.
Woo, great. As I mentioned earlier, we are knee-deep in projects, and so kudos to Mr. Payton for keeping them all straight and organized. We have a few change order requests. I just want to mention to the board, typically change orders would come to the board on consent, because oftentimes they're like the summer work where it's a credit, and so if it's a credit, there's nothing to talk about usually. Tonight's change order is coming in new business because we have a significant one that goes above the allowance, and so we need board approval on that one. So let's talk about these change orders. First of all, we had the roof blow off last July. They are finally finished with all of the last minute punch order items. There's a $2,400 change order that we need to have approved. This one will be reimbursed by the insurance company because it was an insurance claim. They changed some sheet metal coping. 2022 summer work, that one's finally done. Those are all those doors and windows where we got stuck in the supply chain and it took forever. That contractor did not use the contingency allowance, so that is a credit of $22,062.80 to that contract. Then let's talk about the next two. The KMAC parking lot, first of all, we knew it was in really bad shape. So unforeseen circumstances means that they have to dig down deeper. They have to put more rock down. They have to do some things to make it stronger and make it last longer. With that first one, there are three choices that the engineer gave to us. Option 1, 2, and 3. Oh, there they are.
They're in the memo.
I don't know. You guys, yeah, look at this. Here, let's make copies. Yep. Thank you. Hang on. We just, yes, I do. insurance pay for that. Just a second. I'll go to the next one, while Julie gets the copies. The next one is 14,000. There are some additional concrete removal and replacements, about 1,300 square feet. Do you want to talk about that while we're waiting for this? Is that okay? Thank you. Mr. Payton's going to give you a little more details on that.
That's just some additional concrete work that, as we were going through the process of demo and removal of the concrete that was planned for, we found some other areas that we would benefit from replacing some more, going a little bit further. Since we had the work going on already, we can get some benefits from scale, you know. We don't have to mobilize again, things like that, so.
All right, so here's what I'm going to do.
Dr. Fuchs, it'd be easier to project it. Get the document.
Yeah, on the board packet.
Is it correct in the board packet, the digital one?
The digital one is, yeah.
Yeah, the three options are listed in the digital. The three options were in the digital packet.
Yeah, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. Right.
It's gonna come out at the same time, Julie.
Yeah.
Should have budgeted for new printers.
I like it.
Julie, you're trying to, you're like, do it first.
Oh, you know what? Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Julie, I'm gonna need one, okay? Oh, yep. Oh, I might have it. I don't. You need one? Thanks. Okay. Oh, good, thank you. All right, so while you're reading, there are three options for the areas that are weak. The conditions were worse than they expected. Option one is the most expensive, and that would be an additional 4-inch undercut. It would be the most durable and provide the most safety, not safety, but the most time period. It would last the longest. Option two, they'll use some new stone. They'll substitute 1 inch of CA6 for binder. It will allow for compacting the binder layer. That option is $25,000. And then the other option is simply do nothing. And then what that means typically is that it won't last as long as we would like it to last. Mr. Payton, do you want to fill in a few more details than that? And I can share this with you. And this recommendation came from our engineer, Gaywalt Hamilton, who works with our architect and also the contractor, who is Abbey Paving. We've used Abbey previously because they typically come in low on the bids.
I would just say that option one, the $70,000 option, does present some other problems too. A lot of the utilities in that area are very shallow. So there, if we were to choose that option, we may not get as much benefit out of it, and it may cost more than even the 70,000. If we have to relocate some utilities, we've already had issues where, the contractor has run into power lines, they've run into data lines, and they have to fix that. But if they were to go deeper, they may have to relocate some, and that would then be at our expense. So that 70,000 might not even be the whole picture, and we can't say for sure that that additional expenditure is gonna buy us that much more time with the new parking lot. So that's why we're recommending the 25,000. We think it's gonna help, extend the life and preserve the, new parking lot. But it's not, this unknown.
What is the lifespan, or what are you guys looking at? Or what is the pavement
Well,
company
I mean-
Yeah.
offering you? Yeah,
We take our parking lots until they're
right.
Yeah,
to the end.
I think 20 years would be a reasonable expectation.
Thank you.
And you would have to have some seal coating in between.
Right.
Yeah,
Did the underlying contract have a contingency allowance in it?
it did. It had a $10,000 contingency allowance.
And this is, the 25,000 is over and above the contingency?
No, you would still have to take the contingency off of that. So,
Okay.
so,
an actual,
So it's
we're
net
looking
50.
at two, change orders totaling, was it 39,000? Then you would subtract the 10,000 from that. So it'd be a total of 29,000.
So, Mr. Payton, let's assume I know nothing about concrete. What happens if we do nothing?
Potentially, you don't get as long a life out of the parking lot. What they're trying to do is limit movement when heavier vehicles like buses, driving over the pavement. The pavement will move if you don't shore up underneath the underlying substrate. And that's where you're gonna start getting cracking and things like that.
Okay. So basically, if we don't do anything now, you're gonna be coming back to us anyways and asking us for the same amount or more?
Well, what will happen is, like, say, 10 years from now, and I'm just hypothetical,
Okay.
10 years from now, the parking lot's in really rough shape because there's too much movement when those heavier vehicles drive over it.
Okay.
And so then we've got to replace it sooner than we would like to, versus do a little bit more work on the front end now, spend a little bit more money now, and hopefully get to that 20-year mark.
How often are heavy vehicles used at Meredith? Is it
Well, buses daily,
okay,
yeah.
so it's the
um,
same amount as the other schools?
Similar,
Or
yeah.
similar?
I
Well,
would say
it's-
similar.
It'll increase now that the school's gonna open too this fall, so we're gonna have buses.
You always had Fox Valley buses,
Right.
all the other schools, and now you'll have a few of the Kaneland buses back over there.
And there's always athletic competitions.
Yeah.
and-
Additionally,
and
you'll
crowds.
have regular garbage pickups, which we haven't had before. You'll have regular deliveries, which we haven't had before. Food service will be operating there now, so there'll be food deliveries
Yeah.
and things
So with the
like
night
that.
academy opening up there, there's gonna be a lot more action going on
Yeah.
on those parking lots compared to what it's been for the last several years, so.
Dr. Fuchs and Mr. Payton, how long has this project been in the capital list? I know it's been a number of years and for different reasons because the expense it's been put off, but how long has this been on the capital project list?
We closed the building in 2009, and it was in bad shape then.
It needed to be done then.
Yeah.
But
But we
was-
decided to wait, because at that time, we didn't have hardly anybody in it, and Fox Valley moved in little by little, and it's just been, well, the community used it, but it wasn't nearly as bad a shape as it is now. Because they used it in October through March. That gym is used every night of the week and all day Saturday and all day Sunday. It is regularly used.
For
there.
inside groups and outside groups?
That's correct.
What was the original budget total?
Ooh, it was in the neighborhood of $800,000.
819, I think.
Yeah.
819 maybe.
Okay.
that was the original contract
Correct.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
with a $10,000 contingent?
Yeah.
in that 22,000 that wasn't used by the contractor, is any of that decreasing the amount at all?
Those are two different
Is
projects.
it totally different? Okay.
Yeah,
Just
the
wondering.
one was last summer's summer work,
Yeah,
and this one is happening now.
okay.
Yep, two different.
So that money's already
So the,
being used up, correct?
yeah, the 22,000 is money that has not been paid out,
Okay.
so it hasn't been spent.
So just for logistics, if the fault on the recommendation, right, is option 2, but if we wanted to change it, we'd have to change the recommendation, right?
That is correct, thank you.
So we at a point now where we're waiting. Any further discussion? No? So then I guess at this point, we would entertain a motion to approve the, board's recommendation of, accepting option 2. I'll just read it. Entertain a motion of the Board of Education approve the change orders for Anthony Roofing, G. Fisher Construction, Abbey Paving. For Abbey Paving, we're gonna be accepting, approving option 2, which is the $25,000 for additional concrete removal and replacement, 1,300 square feet.
Actually, maybe I should make that more clear, because that's the 14,000, it's the 25 plus the 14.
Oh,
So option
excuse me.
2 is the 25,000 and the additional concrete, I could put in there, if you want, you could put in there at 14,000. That way it's more clear.
Sure, so we'll be approving option 2, which is the Abbey Paving, the additional 25,000, plus the additional 14,000 for the concrete removal and replacement by Abbey Paving for the same parking lot.
Thank you. We have the contractor on site. They're there,
Already working.
exactly.
So moved.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
And second.
All right, at this point, roll call, please.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
No.
Kinsey.
No,
Mr. Fleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
No.
Dr. Lawler. Oh, I got you.
Aye again.
So motion passes.
Hold on, we,
No.
Oh, I'm sorry,
we didn't get
Aaron.
Aaron.
still,
Yeah.
Wrong.
No. So we need to discuss what parts, which parts, because there's 2 parts to it. Do we need to pull them apart and discuss each one individually?
Yes?
Okay.
Let's start with the 14,000, the additional sidewalks that are needed. What concerns do you have? What? The contractor.
So I don't have any issues with the 14,000. I would elect to go with option 3 and, so to speak, roll the dice. It sounds like there's the wording and the way it was presented, there's a chance that it could lengthen the life, but there's also a chance that it couldn't. And so at this point, I would say let's save the money on that end. That's my opinion.
For the 25,000.
Correct.
Okay.
So I can be persuaded, so this is just thinking out loud. But on an $800,000 project, increasing it by another $25,000 doesn't seem like the expenditure is always large, right? So we're just adding a little bit on top of that expenditure for the, and if I understood it, which I've admitted that this is not my strong suit, if we don't do that $25,000 on top of this, we actually kind of put at risk the thing we did before then, right? Am I understanding that correctly? So that's why I voted yes.
That's the current work and the recommendation from
The engineer,
The
the
engineer.
civil engineer.
Okay.
The problem with that land out there is it's swamp. And so when we did the bus lot, we went down 16 inches and put really hard rocks and concrete to prevent what we're seeing on the north side of Meredith now. So, when we think about Meredith and how bad that parking lot is, yes, it's been bad for many years. This is an opportunity that you've already invested X number of dollars. I do see how you can roll the dice and hope that it lasts. And, I hope it does too, without spending that extra money. And hopefully it won't tie the hands of a future board having to redo a parking lot sooner than expected.
So if you have to redo it, what does that entail? It's not just sealing it, it's not just adding an extra coat, it's tearing it up again, or, again, I'm not an expert too. So what does that mean? Like, it's 10
Potentially,
years from now? Yeah.
potentially doing the same project over again.
Okay.
I mean, eventually you're gonna have to do that anyway, but it's just, how long are you gonna get between now and then? Is it gonna be 12 years? Is it gonna be 15 years?
So the cost of the overall project again was,
Around 819,000.
so we're talking about,
3%.
3%.
That's right. On the 25,000, it's 1.8% if we do the 15,000, because they would already been approved for the 10,000, right?
Yes.
Or it would have already on.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
that's right.
included in the 819.
I, oh, I'm sorry.
no, yeah,
for
go ahead.
No, you-
No, so I was just gonna say, so we're spending the money now anyways. And so there's potential that 10 years from now, we're gonna have to do it again. So it's not just 25,000. I just wanna make sure it's clear that it's not like
I
25,000
don't
years.
want you to hold me to that 10 years.
No,
you know,
no, no, no.
that's-
I know
Oh,
that.
no, we're
I know.
holding you to
Yeah.
10.
We're- yeah.
15 maybe.
Yeah. But
I'm
even
not
15,
saying
yeah.
in 10 years it's gonna
Yeah.
fail. I'm just
Right.
saying that
No, I agree. I totally, like I said, there's also gonna be a lot of stuff going on. I just want people to understand that it's not 20, like whatever the years are, a few years from now, it's not, we're putting $25,000 into it. We're gonna put another 800,000 back into it when we have to fix it again. So we're saying 25,000 now to give us that extra guarantee versus whenever this does happen.
And I would say it's not a guarantee either.
Yeah.
Similarly,
I guess I'm saying the civil engineer
it's recommending, well, he
being-
gave us our options.
Yeah.
And we can choose, and the board is choosing.
Yeah.
I guess I wish there could have been a little more discussion, prior to the vote, so that I better understood why, we're not choosing option 2 and picking option 3, so that we can share that with the engineer.
Yeah.
But now we have enough information. It sounds like we're willing to take a risk, to make it last as long as it lasts. And then in the future, we'll take care of it at that time.
I just want to make one quick point here. Right? So it's a 3% change request on a $819,000 project with the contingency, backed out of it already. I mean, the last couple of board meetings that we had, we're discussing, whether or not we rebuild the track or do a parking lot, right? So if this is going to give some and prolong the life of the parking lot a little bit more, and I know that parking lot's in bad shape anyway, but if that, like 10, 15 years down the road, and we get into the same position, right, where maybe we can get 5 more years out of the parking lot because we did a little bit more now for $25,000, and maybe we need something for $500,000, $600,000, $800,000, somewhere else where this is maybe no longer a discussion anymore. So that's what we're dealing with right now. We're either a parking lot or repaving the track. So I mean, if it's $25,000 right now might make a difference, 15, 20 years down the road in a similar issue that we're having, the dilemma we're having today, between those two things. So that's just kind of where my mind was going. It's a very small change request.
And the contractor had a chance before they bid to inspect the parking lot. They knew what they were bidding upon, right? Didn't they?
Yes,
They
these
had-
are soils below ground.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, but they had a chance. And
Absolutely.
so the technical documentation was with them beforehand.
Correct.
So,
Absolutely.
no, they knew what they were bidding.
So this has to be decided tonight, right? You can't come back like in
Yes.
July
Not in
for.
July.
Because they're on site right now.
Exactly, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Page, could you explain the difference between the CA6 stone and the binder and how much of a difference it would would not make.
Well, the deeper, you put your stone, the more layers of that stone get compacted down there, the less movement you're gonna have. It's the soil underneath that that moves when the vehicles travel over it. And so the soil moves and everything above it then moves with it. So if you get more stone, down there to prevent that movement, spread it, what it does is spreads out the forces. It prevents the movement in the asphalt, and then the asphalt doesn't crack, etc. So the binder is, rather than going deeper with stone, you're putting another layer of asphalt on top to just thicken that up. So not quite as effective as the deeper stone, but it's better than nothing at all.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, if we have consensus on the sidewalk repairs, can we see if we can move forward with that?
Take action on that one and improve that.
Yeah, does anyone want to have any further discussion on that portion of this recommendation? Or do we, at this point then, I'll entertain a motion to approve the $14,000 for the additional concrete removal.
Well, and also the roof, right?
And the roof, correct. So we would be approving the $2,400 for the roof with Anthony Roofing, that's reimbursed anyway.
Sure.
For the insurance, and then the $14,000 for the concrete removal,
And you also need to do the credit for Fisher.
as well as we'd accept the credit, right?
Right.
Accept the credit for $22,062.80 from G Fisher Construction. So let me rephrase that, and then we can go.
Yes.
So at this
Just
point,
clarify for Julie.
yeah. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to accept the $2,400 additional expense from Anthony Roofing, which I'd like to add is going to be reimbursed from the insurance, as well as accept the credit from G Fisher Construction for the $22,062.80, and approve the additional $14,000 expense by Abbey Paving for the additional concrete removal at the KMAT parking lot.
So, and to clarify, that means then we're taking out the 25,000. So if you approve this, you're agreeing that you're not including that. Okay. Just want to make sure everybody understands that we're not like doing two different votes or something. So this is a one time. All right.
Right,
Thank you.
option 3.
Should we also note then that we are also accepting option 3 for
You
the,
could do that.
okay. You want me to start over again? Would that be better? Would that be better, Julie?
Yeah, you can add option 3 to the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
That after 3 p.m.
So in addition, also adding option 3, which is no further cost for the unforeseen circumstances regarding the pavement at the KMAT parking lot. Can I make a motion? Yes, President? You want me to- Okay, so
Yeah, you
I'll
can.
make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Mr. McCauley,
Aye.
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mr. Cook,
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons,
Nay.
Mr. Kleisner,
Aye.
Mr. Minkus.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 6-1.
Okay, we'll take that information back to the engineers and plan accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, that, yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Mr.
Mr.
Pegg.
Pegg, appreciate it.
Thank you.
That concludes new business for tonight. At this point, we'll move on to the superintendent report, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Layden.
Thank you. This is our last week of summer school. As you know, we have summer school. It's offered about 3 weeks each summer. Try to conclude it before the 4th of July holiday, because we usually miss a bunch of students that week. So we've shifted over the years to conclude, and it ends this Thursday. So summer school and ESY ends this week. The next thing is our board retreat. We just remember that it's here from 6 to 9, and it will be in the front conference room. And the primary portion is closed session for the retreat. So if there is anybody who attends, they would come into that front conference room, and then once the pledge, public comment is over, then we go into closed session. We'll stay in closed session the remainder of that meeting. And that is from 6 to 9. So it's an hour earlier start than normal on July 10th. And thank you for taking the time to fill out the survey, because I believe we had just about everybody do the survey. Those were the 2 updates that I had, pretty quick. Thank you.
Dr. Fuchs, anything?
Nope,
You done?
I've
You're
talked
done?
enough tonight. I'm good.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so topics for future agenda. Is there anything people would like to discuss? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to start going through, taking a look at some of the district's expenses and perhaps go to RFP for some of the utilities, cell phones, internet service, like that. Prices for a lot of those have come down substantially as technology's gotten better. Let's take a look at that, and if we're going to have to try and move some money around to be able to afford a track or any number of things, let's see what efficiencies we can better get out of the budget. So I would definitely take a look at what we're doing for utilities, what we're doing internet service, cell phones. Those are what comes to immediately to mind that we need to take a look at. I'm open as far as other aspects where we can, budgetary wise. All right. Another thing I'd like to bring up on the agenda of future is having our district in conjunction with others have a not necessarily a college night, but a skilled trades night. We have a lot of resources available in our local communities here, particularly with respect to skilled trades. A number of people who have started out in skilled trades or as a business, I know Elburn's full of businesses like that. And giving our students the best chance possible at getting them exposed to apprenticeship, internship opportunities that are available to them. Also, in conjunction with that, or probably separately, having a separate transition fair, particularly for special education, our special education population, and invite the Kaneland community, but I would also extend the invitation for both the skilled trades fair as well as for special education transition fair to like Hinckley Big Rock, some of our neighboring districts, Hinckley Big Rock, Batavia, Geneva, some of the other districts in Mid Valley are very close nearby. Just a thought. And as well as inviting Wabansie Community College, you have special student services?
We do.
Like COD does?
Yep.
Yeah.
We also have a lot of trade programs.
Okay, yeah, so you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Just put this on the
Although I'm
future.
not speaking for Wabansie.
I'm sorry?
On the camera, I'm not speaking for Wabansie.
Oh, no, in your official capacity.
Right.
But to put this on the agenda as something to improve the educational outcomes for a lot of our students and let them know what's available out there. Anything I missed on that one, Aaron?
I think that's good.
I mean,
I like it.
yeah, and the special student services person that we can. Okay, good.
They're great people.
Yeah, we should.
I don't know if you were going to share. I just want to share that this agreement that the board had for topics for future agenda requires a consensus. So just want to make sure that if we go back to your first topic, Board Member Mankivsky, the district expenses. I don't know, Dr. Fuchs, you're going to have a comment about that before we move on, or before we take act or not get a consensus.
Yes, I'd like the board to know, we currently already bid out our electrical and our natural gas in terms of utilities. Additionally, our internet is provided through NIU, and it's a government rate that they give, as a partner, because we're partners with them. So those are 3 areas that you mentioned that are already, relatively inexpensive and bid. They're not inexpensive, but they're bid.
They're bid.
Okay.
The cell phones is something we can look at. Currently we use Verizon because they also have government rates. And so,
That's E-rate, correct? The
yeah,
E-rate program?
their E-rate is the grant that provides the extra money to help pay for the government rates, that we get with the cell phones. So I'll have to do some more work on that, with Mr. Wolf. But we do take advantage of E-rate. If you'll remember, last year, it was 2 years ago, because last year we implemented it. He got an over $2 million grant for all those devices. So, I'm not sure what opportunities there are, because we try to take advantage of everything that we can, that we know about.
Okay, I'm just
So,
asking to try
yep,
to, let's take prices on some of this, some of these services have come down. If the gas and electric, so be it. Let's take a look elsewhere. Photocopier paper, what we're using.
yep.
Let's, you know,
We bid that
What-
out
what-
for many
okay.
years. Now we use a government
Yeah.
contract
Yeah.
because, 2 years ago, we couldn't get paper.
no, understood.
Right.
But things
Yes.
things
Things
are
have
changing
changed.
again.
Yep.
Let's see what we can do to, you know,
This year's paper is already committed for.
right, but I mean,
Summer
I'm
industry.
talking about RFP
Yep.
going forward
I
and
could
trying
add that
to,
to the
yeah.
spring bid list back
Okay.
on there.
okay,
Do we need a
A
thumbs
consent,
up?
yeah, consensus. And so to clarify, Board Member Mankivsky, the areas within that you mentioned that already don't have a contract or a bid to it, bring back more information on it.
correct.
Is that accurate? Okay.
Correct. And if there are purchasing cooperatives that we could be part of.
We are part of several.
I know,
Yeah.
and are there any other possibilities for us? Well, you know, we're gonna have some increased expenses going forward, we know. Let's squeeze what we possibly can.
Is there consensus on that one? So we do have 4. And then the second one, a consensus on some sort of a transition skilled trades night, look into something like that for our students. Is there a consensus?
What does Fox Valley Career Center do? And we have a technology, or not technology, sorry, resource center for our students that want to look into. So it's not, they're not doing college. We have a department that works on, that provides that kind of stuff. What, do they provide something already?
Not specifically skilled trades night.
Okay,
They have a Fox Valley Career Center open house night.
right.
But I think what Mr. Mankowski is talking about is slightly different than what they
Right.
currently do.
Open,
Do
yeah.
you know for sure?
My interpretation is, to make sure that I'm clear,
Yeah.
that our open houses that we have for, or the open house for the Fox Valley Career Center is to learn about our programs, our courses, and when Dr. Burchell, because he goes to all of the open houses, or Vita, Martin, they go to the open houses at the different districts. What they don't, I believe what they don't have is a skilled trade fair where people from the trades would come in. I know they have communications with them, and they onboard and they have guest speakers come in, but not an actual fair night.
That's what I
Yeah,
agree.
we're on the same page.
And
Yeah,
our
it's a
high school,
page.
sorry, and our high school resource, I'm drawing a blank of what that department's called, that, you know, like somebody wants to, you know, students.
CTE?
Yeah, you know, they're looking, you know, I want to go to college, so, you know, there's certain schools that come here
Yeah.
and we could talk, you know, do they also do that for, do kids have opportunities, like those kind of things, like the military comes here, the kids can talk to them. Is there, do we do that in-house for
Some of those
trades?
colleges and universities would come, but for the trades themselves, I can't speak to the high school. Dr. Horn, do you know?
We do have our college and career center set up.
Can you, I'm sorry, can you go to the mic?
Yeah.
Just encourages a longer answer too, so thank you.
Thank you, that's what it is, the college and career center, that's what I
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
trying
we-
to,
we
so,
do
yeah,
have-
like, no, you're good.
Yeah, we
Thank
do have
you.
a college and career center set up in the cafeteria. We do frequently have colleges come in, both 2 and 4 year colleges, as well as the military. But I think an opportunity for improvement to expand upon that, we are in the early stages of the College and Career Center with the added counselor, would be looking at some trades.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Horn.
So then when, I don't want to put more work on your plate, Dr. Horn, I'm sorry, but would you be able to come back and report to us then, like how that went, or maybe even through you, Dr.
Yeah,
Layden? Okay, yeah.
As that gets updated and shifted, we can do that. And then the timing of these two, with the start of the school year, we'll work with both Mrs. Eggleston, Mr. Wolf, and then the high school and Dr. Burchell for both of those requests that the board is given a consensus on.
We have
Hold on,
consensus
see,
on
yeah, somebody else, yeah.
Yeah, we just made so we have consensus on both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other additional topics for future agendas at this time? Okay. Okay, it is now time for round 2 of public comments. We have some? Okay. Well, I gotta, yeah.
Gotta do your thing.
Let me go back to the speech. One of the things on my list is to summarize this, so it'll. Okay, the board values public input to inform our decision making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into a debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you do so at the microphone. State your name and your village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comment to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have an opportunity. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. You are encouraged to seek private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. So at this point, we have Mr. Scott Stalkup. You are up first.
Thank you, Scott Stalkup from Sugar Grove. I have 3 kids in the district. I only had 2 things, and I heard some comments that extended my list, but I'll stay under 3 minutes. On the budget, my question is, how much are we spending total on the academy? I think it'd be wonderful to see that as a separate line item for all costs associated with the academy. There's 5 added staff. How many of those added staff are on the academy? Second, a few meetings ago, there was some discussion about roundtable discussions with various entities, PTO, CAC, whoever, etc. I was just curious if any have been set up or scheduled. I'd be glad to help in assisting, facilitating locations, anything, just reach out. I'm glad to give some time to help that. I think it's a great idea. For safety, for standard-based grading, for whatever the topic might be. On the budget change order list that you guys voted on, the concrete removal is a fair price for 1,400 square feet. I'm in the industry. Currently, I have $70 million under my supervision as a project manager, so I am speaking with some experience. On the paving, you may want to rethink that. My guess is you're probably not getting 10 years out of it. You may not get 5 out of it. I might rethink that. I might ask the question on, is there a geotech fabric you can put in between layers that might give some stabilization? Just some food for thought. Regarding your trade seminars, so I had a friend of mine who owns a very large electrical company come into the junior high. We spoke to 2 different classes in the industrial arts class. It was, information. We're just providing information and education of other ways other avenues people can go to. One of my kids is probably going down one of these avenues, so there are companies out there that are ready and willing and would love to come in and talk. If you need some, please reach out. I gladly provide that and help set it up and facilitate it. We put together a little presentation and talked. We answered any questions they may have, from real world experiences. So I think that's a great idea. Appreciate the creativity. And we were at the junior high and would love to get to the high school and the next steps. A lot of these companies would offer jobs to, high schoolers just almost on the spot. I mean, we are in dire need of people in the construction industry, so there's a real need. So there's plenty of people that would jump in for any trade they may want to think about, from flooring to carpenters to concrete to sprinkler fitters, HVAC, electric, general contractors. So if there's any interest in that, please reach out. I'd love to help you with that. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thanks. Next up, Mrs. Tonya Grosinger.
I'm just gonna leave it. Tonya Grosinger, Maple Park. So I'm just gonna give a little bit of insight. I don't know how many of our board members or even people in the district know this, but as far as safety goes, for our high school, we had the fire in May, had a call, obviously 911, and all of our first responders. I don't know if anybody knows how it works. When you have a fire call for 911, it's basically box call. So many people respond, right? You're going to have your Maple Park, Elburn, Sugar Grove, Caneville, depending on how big the box is, maybe Big Rock, things like that. They all come, no matter what, they all come. But when you have a 911 medic call, only that in your district that you're in gets called unless somebody else needs to be dispatched. Does anybody know who comes to Kaneland High School for medic calls? Because it's Big Rock. Caneville doesn't have an ambulance. Now, I know that the neighborhood that's by the high school, same, please don't make me do it, same kind of side across Meredith, same side as the high school. They're trying to get Caneville. So Caneville contracts with Big Rock because they don't have an ambulance service. They contract with Big Rock every year to make their, whatever Caneville's district is now Big Rock's ambulance district. I can't tell you the amount of times Maple Park has had to do responses for Caneville, or for in place of Big Rock because of these situations where there's a train they can't get over, yada yada, things like that. I know that neighborhood is trying really hard to get Caneville to switch contracts with either Maple Park or Elburn, trying to get something a little bit closer to where they actually live and that would have a better response time. We're talking about safety here. I would strongly encourage that maybe you guys kind of get on board with that. If anybody needs help or who to talk to, I know a lot of people with that stuff. So please reach out. But I personally do not like the fact that when my kids or my family or anybody is at the high school, if a medic call is necessary, that they have to wait for the response time of Big Rock. So just take that into consideration. Like I said, safety was a huge talk. I don't know that a lot of people know that Caneville doesn't have the ambulance service needed to assist in something like this. When you have your football games and stuff like that where ambulances are necessary, it's typically Big Rock, Elburn, and Maple Park that are on a rotating shift of who comes and who has their ambulance there for the night of the game, or whatever. So encourage you to kind of look into that and maybe try and encourage to be a part of that transition to get Maple Park or Elburn to be the contracted medic to come out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else this time? All right, there's no closed session scheduled for tonight. So after the vote to adjourn, the recording of tonight's meeting is concluded. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we
I'm at 35.
adjourn at 9:35.